Hi, I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council, also Collin County Republican Party Chair. I'm coming at you tonight with a double feature. This is going to be tonight's council meeting plus the budget meeting we had from late July. So y'all may remember at a couple of points me telling you that I've realized that if I don't do this video after I get back from the council meeting that night, it ain't getting done. Well, after the budget meeting, I got home with every intention to do this video, and I didn't get around to it because I was making last-minute preps to leave early the next morning on vacation with my family. And then I intended to do it on vacation. Guess what? Didn't get done. But the camera's fired up. I'm here, and I have my notes from the budget meeting, so I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to go right into the recap from tonight's council meeting, which was all about the budget anyway. So, at the budget meeting, the overarching theme is the financial challenges related to now being a mature city. We are no longer a growing city. We're growing by like that much a year. We are a mature city, which comes with its own challenges and its own responsibilities, and we are figuring out that transition. We are going to propose a budget that is within the voter approval rate. So the voter approval rate is anything, well, there's a complex formula to it, but essentially it's no more than a 3.5% increase on to property taxes on properties taxed in both years. That's within the maintenance and operations portion of the tax rate, because the interest and sinking portion, which means the debt, those are bonds, those are voted on separately. And boy, are we going to have some bond elections next year. We'll get to that in a subsequent recap. We are offering a gross one-time compensation payment to staff because we are looking at having no staff raises this year. Maybe, maybe not. I'll get to that. We have a hiring freeze right now through January of 2025. We have operated our contingency budget plan because things are getting lean, and I'll explain that as well. So we have reduced spending in capital maintenance, facilities and parks, reducing in expenditures across all departments. We have had a couple of notable challenges with public facilities corporations. We have actually lost revenue that we previously had. They've just been disappeared from the tax rolls. That's upwards of a couple $1 million that we are no longer getting every year, that we had been getting previously. So whenever we have a tax revenue shortage, that has to be made up for either by cutting expenses or raising taxes or both. So we're only having one new position that we're hiring for. That is a water pump station operator. I don't know if we've hired for that yet, but if you happen to be a water pump station operator and you're interested, please apply with the City of Plano. Our CIP, that's our Community Investment Program, that's mainly our capital expenditures. We're looking at $317 million with an operating budget of $393 million. That's for a combined total of $710 million. We are looking at no new programs for this next fiscal year. We will take the final vote on the new budget the first meeting of next month, September. I think that's September 9th, if I recall. It's the first council meeting of September for the new fiscal year, which starts October 1st. The average home value in Plano is now $579,621. That's just the average. Wow. Now, it is important to note that the senior tax freeze, this is if you are 65 and over, you can apply for to have your taxes frozen at whatever level you're paying for that year. You can do it in the year that you turn 65. You don't have to wait till you actually turn 65. But there's a dramatic increase of, I think, $3.3 million are subject to the tax freeze. So that's $11 million overall. And what we reviewed tonight, it's a whopping 37% of our homesteaded homes will not contribute any more in property taxes going forward because they are frozen. So senior tax freeze, again, applies to age 65 and up, where you can have your taxes frozen at whatever level they are right now. No matter what happens to your property value in the future, your taxes do not go up, your property taxes. 37% of our homes have their property taxes frozen. So it does not matter what happens with inflation. It does not matter what happens with property values. Those homes will not be contributing any more money going forward until the inevitable, which is part of life, the final part of life. But every year, because Plano's population is aging in place, these are folks who are not contributing new property tax revenue every year to the tax rolls. Now remember, the idea behind the latest property tax reform, of which I was a part in Austin in 2019, was that the government, the local government, cities, counties, school districts, can keep pace with inflation, because inflation's a real thing, as y'all well know. You've all been punched in the face with it. Inflation is a real thing. Cities, counties, school districts, etc., can raise property taxes to keep pace with inflation, but you cannot exceed that 3.5% threshold for cities without allowing the people to vote for it. So again, I championed this. And of course, that was passed in 2019, took effect in 2020. Inflation went through the roof in 2021 and 2022. But this is 37% of our homesteads, which are no longer going to be having any tax increase. Doesn't matter what inflation is. So that presents a challenge. Our revenues have stabilized, but our expenditures keep growing because of the aforementioned inflation. As of June 14th, we had a $58 million deficit, and our sales tax is flat. So year over year, our sales tax has steadily grown, but it's now flat. And of course, as regular listeners of this recap know, that DART takes half of our sales tax, $114 million this year. Then if we weren't paying into the DART system, then that's $114 million that could be used to offset the property taxes. That would be sales tax that we would be able to use for the city. And building and development revenue is also down by $5 million. So this is a steady amount of revenue for building and development that, permits, et cetera, that we've received year over year for a long time. But because we are no longer a growing city, $5 million less this year than we had last year. A few dates to bear in mind. August 12th, that was today, we had the presentation on the proposed community investment program. August 15th, that's this Thursday, we will have the council work session and the grant funding workshop. August 22nd, we're having a town hall on the budget and the tax rate. August 26th, we're having a public hearing on the tax rate. September 9th, yes, I was right. Hey, look at that. Council will adopt the budget and the tax rate, and then October 1st is the next fiscal year. So rolling into tonight's meeting. So you get the idea that we're facing budgetary challenges. The first item, which actually wasn't budget related, we're going through a zoning and ordinance rewrite, and we've convened a committee for that. And the chair of the committee was named Bennett Ratliff, who is currently on Planning and Zoning Commission. We then had a review from the legacy property owners. It was a sentiment survey, legacy property owners sentiment survey. This is for the Legacy Corporate Park, Legacy West, Shops at Legacy, and Granite Park. So a few highlights from this. We have a surplus of vacant office space. We have a lot of vacant office space, to nobody's surprise. And that's not unique to Plano. That's everybody suffering from that. Most of the tenants want to downsize, but they want to stay in the area. There's not really a lot of good choices to downsize into, and parts of that are very old. They need to be renovated, updated, made into smaller space. Workers, again, not shockingly, to nobody's surprise, want flexibility to blend home and work. Everybody worked from home who could, starting in 2020, and a lot of companies have had people back to the office, but they're offering hybrid models, and workers are demanding those hybrid models. Retail is strong right now, while office leasing is soft. DART, they report in the Legacy Property Owner Sentiment Survey, is underutilized if it's used at all. Maybe that's to nobody's surprise. It's certainly not to my surprise. Again, that $114 million that we're forking over to DART in your sales tax money this year, and the property owners are reporting that DART is underutilized, if it's utilized at all, in the legacy area. So they report that we need a greater variety of housing types. I've been banging that drum for a while. And price points. That's right, there are more housing types and needs and life stages than can be suited by large single-family homes or apartments. And they cited the need for more mixed use. I want to caution, if you want more mixed use, then largely that just means more apartments, which we already have too many of. We have too many large single-family homes and too many apartments, and not enough smaller footprint ownership options like condos, cottage homes, patio homes, townhomes, etc. 54% of office workers prefer to live in close proximity to work. That's not the selling point in favor of living close to work that it seems, because that means that 46% of office workers do not prefer to live in close proximity to work. They want to get away from where they work. So roughly 50-50. They're citing the need for a large conference and event space, which, hey, I get. And they're looking for more programmable park space in the area to have events at and to actually do things with, not just enjoy the greenery, which, hey, I enjoy greenery as much as the next person. And they want to increase their hotel options, some more boutique hotels, a wider variety, some more corporate hotels. And they want better economic incentives. So one of the other things to know about DART, and yes, I will sound like a broken record on this, is by virtue of being a DART member city, that's why we have to fork over $114 million this year to DART, an estimated $117 million in the next year. That's just automatic. That's whether we like it or not. And that's money that could be used for our economic development. Now, becoming a DART member city was basically our economic development plan way back in the day, in the early 80s. But we have grown in ways that nobody would have imagined then, to the point where $114 million is hurting us because that's money that we cannot use any part of it for our economic development. And because these business owners are rightly pointing out nobody's actually using DART anyway, or very few people, that's not an economic development proposition. It's not enough to attract businesses. And so we are economically disadvantaged in that respect. Now, we did cover the storm debris cleanup. This is also not related to the budget, except where it touches rainy day funds, and I'll get to that in a bit. So the storm was May 28th. It was on the runoff election day where you elected me Collin County Republican Party chair. Thank you very much again. And some of our election workers were outstanding, going above and beyond the call of duty, because these were winds the equivalent of a Cat 1 hurricane or an F1 tornado that ripped through Plano, causing a lot of damage. And it was, most of the damage was in East Plano, but the damage was widespread and significant. So it wasn't the small focused area that a tornado usually has. It was far more widespread. So these were 80-mile-an-hour winds. And some of our election workers, like Frank Deutschman, who was featured on the news for this, there were polling locations that had no power at all. And so they sprung to make sure that no voter was turned away, even using a generator to power voting machines, and make sure that voters could still vote. So hats off. So our priority was to first clear the roads and the public rights of way of the debris. Our normal process for doing this was insufficient. We cleaned up in 2 months the quantity of debris, 100,000 cubic yards of it, that we would collect in the course of a whole year. So we collected in 2 months what we would normally take a year to clean up. So we did tap into our rainy day fund in a significant way to hire contractors to help augment our efforts to assist with the cleanup. to put it in perspective, 100,000 cubic yards, a washing machine, like a washer dryer, a washer is about a cubic yard. So we picked up 100,000 washers. Now, some of the feedback we got, because I was urging folks to be patient with our efforts, a lot of people were like, when are you getting to us? When are you getting to us? And we generally started in the east because that's where most of the damage was done, and we just worked our way west slowly. But no matter the methodology we used, somebody somewhere in the city had to be dead last for getting their debris picked up, which is an unfortunate reality. But when it comes to the methodology that we used to pick up the debris, one of the pieces of feedback we got was that not publishing any time frame would have been better than saying it'll be one more week, and then after a week saying it'll be one more week, and then after 1 week saying it'll be one more week. We've never done a cleanup this scale before, and we did not accurately estimate it. So folks were saying it would be better to just say, we don't know when we're going to get to you, please be patient, rather than setting an expectation which we failed to deliver on, which I understand. Now, moving on to our regular, that was all preliminary open stuff. Moving on to our regular meeting where we did talk about the budget and budget items. First, we had an item pulled off the consent agenda. This is for a traffic calming study for $188,000. The idea behind this study was that it would help understand how to limit or prevent speeding in residential areas. And while that's laudable effort, we denied it. We didn't just table it, we denied it because with the budgetary constraints that we're under right now, now's not the right time to be spending almost $200,000. And it was Councilmember Prince who brought that up and convinced most of the rest of us, including me. And so that was denied. We passed the Downtown Plano Public Improvement District, that's a PID, Service and Assessment Plan, unanimously. So a PID, Public Improvement District, means that the property owners in that area are assessed an additional tax levy, which goes to help with improvements in the district, ostensibly for the betterment of all. So this is disclosed on their property forms. They, if they read their forms, they know what they're getting into. In fact, we require it disclosed on a separate page, not buried in fine print on page 38. But this assessment plan was how that money is going to be put to use, and that was gone through by the PID members itself. We then had a budget and community investment program public hearing and the adoption of the certified appraisal rolls for both Collin and Denton County. So we had $59.3 billion of property from Collin County and $1.8 billion of property from the sliver of Plano that is in Denton County. That's a total of $61.1 billion citywide of property. We then discussed the tax rate. So as I've discussed in the mention about the budget, we had less revenue coming to us due to exemptions, notably the senior tax freeze. And so these are folks that require the same level of service and a greater expense of service because, again, we're not growing anymore. We're not gaining economies of scale from new people coming to Plano, but we are subject to inflation. However, those tax revenues are not. So those revenues are not keeping pace with the increase in expenses. We added $3.9 billion in property value from existing property. It just increased in valuation. And then $900 million in new property came on. That's improvements, new construction, et cetera. In order to adopt the no new revenue rate, which means we keep taxes flat on properties taxed in both years, we would have to eliminate an additional $10 million from our operating budget. To be clear, we're not contemplating that this year, nor am I championing it. And interestingly, if we did adopt the no new revenue rate, property taxes on homesteaded homes would still increase by 6%, 6.4% by my math. That's because of the lost revenue from elsewhere, as well as how the taxes are calculated. So again, this is on the maintenance and operations portion of the tax rate. The interest and sinking rate, that's the debt, that's our payment on our bonds, that's calculated separately because you, the voter, already had a chance to weigh in on whether you wanted to pay for those items. That's why I caution everybody in every bond election, if you are told this won't affect your taxes, do not buy it. It is misleading. What they mean by that is they are going to retire some debt and time it such that they will ramp up the new debt as the old debt retires. If you did not approve the bond, then the debt would just go down. The old debt would be retired. You wouldn't replace it with new debt, and your tax bill would go down. So you, dear taxpayer, are on the hook to pay every penny of every bond. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. So but anyway, the reason for the tax increase is because of the way it all falls out with reductions in revenue, as well as those two tax rates, the maintenance and operations versus the interest and sinking, the debt rate. So it's a little wonky, but understand that even the no new revenue rate would have a tax on those homesteaded homes, because again, that money's got to come from somewhere. Now, I will note that roughly half of our tax is from single-family property taxes from single-family homes. About 15 to 20% of it is from multifamily. So a smaller portion of the tax comes from multifamily, but not necessarily a smaller portion of city services. City services are driven largely by population, not by square footage. Not always, but for the most part, they're driven by population. So about 15-20% of our total property taxes are collected from multifamily, but they take an outsized share of the city services based on the tax they put in. However, renters, multifamily or renters of single-family homes, get zero property tax protections. So there are a number of protections afforded property owners, or homeowners, I should say, if it's your actual home where you live, your homestead you have a homestead exemption. There are a number of protections under Texas law from property tax increases. Renters get none of that. So while renters pay less per dwelling unit in taxes than single-family homeowners, renters pay more per square foot than homeowners do. So some interesting math. We did publish the same tax rate this year that we published last year, that we adopted last year. That's 41.76 cents. But again, if the aggregate property values are going up, then if we leave the tax rate alone, you are still getting a tax increase, which that's the nature of inflation. As inflation increases, if we're not adding new people to the tax rolls and new properties to the tax rolls like we were when we were a growing city, then we must raise taxes commensurate to offset inflation, or we must decrease expenses commensurate to offset inflation. But inflation is going to keep coming at us in perpetuity, forever and ever. And so maybe a little, maybe a lot. So there must be tax increases with that, because if we adopt the no new revenue rate or just never raise taxes, then eventually we will eat ourselves out of a city. So a little overview on the community investment program. We had a total of $317 million proposed. For Parks and Rec, I'm just going to give you the breakdown of the highlights. This isn't everything, but the highlights. Parks and Recreation, total of $78.9 million. $11.4 million of that is for facilities, specifically for the Tom Muhlenbeck Recreation Center. This was a bond item that passed in 2021, so you've already had a vote on it, but now we're actually going to undergo the expense for $11.4 million. Park improvements totaling $48.3 million, that's citywide, all sorts of park improvements. Parks capital maintenance for $6.5 million, that's like major repairs, diagnostic, stuff like that. Park fees, $2.5 million. That's what we collect in park fees from new developments, and then we build parks out of it. And municipal drainage pertaining to parks for $10.2 million. That's things like stream bank stabilization, which had some discussion tonight. The facilities department, not to be confused with Parks and Rec facilities, is going to have CIP expenses of 20 million, CIP Community Investment Program. Public Works is slated for $101 million between streets and water/wastewater. Engineering and Transportation is looking at $112.8 million, including $62.3 million for streets. I know you can't wait to have those streets torn up some more. Drainage for $12.8 million. This is drainage not related to municipal parks drainage. Sewer for $23 million. We are going to have the nicest sewers in North Texas. We're going to have some park events in the sewers. Water improvements for $14.6 million. Interestingly, 1,500 miles of water line runs through the city of Plano. Now, speaking of the water lines, I do want to note that a lot of the reason for the churn in Parker Road is that we were doing water line replacement underneath it at the same time. A lot of our water and sewer lines run underneath our thoroughfares. And so while we were making repairs to Parker Road itself, we were digging down in there and actually replacing, maintaining water and sewer lines simultaneously. And not just in Parker, but a lot of our roads. And that's what caused such a delay for such a long time and why there was so much work going on. So it wasn't simply fixing potholes, it was doing long-term infrastructure repair. Because it would make no sense to shut down Parker Road or a portion of Parker Road for a while or a few lanes to repair it and then open it up and then a couple months later shut it all down again just to dig through what we repaired and replace the water lines. Conversely, to dig through in the first place to replace the water lines and then if we're going to repair the roads, let's get all that out of the way first, then let's repair them right, and then let's reopen it. So that's what's starting to happen. So we apologize for the inconvenience. And I thank you for tuning in. We are going to have the budget meeting, the budget working session this Thursday at 5 o'clock at Davis Library. Remember, we are not back in the council chambers yet. So Thursday, 5 o'clock at Davis Library for the budget work session and grants funding workshop. I am Shelby Williams with Plano City Council and Collin County Republican Party Chair, wishing you a fantastic day, even though I'm recording this at night. But I will release it in the morning, and so I wish you a fantastic day. God bless.